what I do is, last time we had talked about in general about the 18th century Jews and the movement towards liberalism and the idea of easing some restrictions upon the Jews and and becoming ultimately equal citizens with the same rights as anybody else wherever they live. So I had, yeah, this is from Martin Gilbert's book, so had this map just to show you some of the things we had discussed, but now you can see exactly where they were occurring. Okay, so this is called the Emancipation of European Jewry. So it starts with 1789, that's the French Revolution. Remember last time we had talked about this National Assembly was called to decide, should the Jews in their midst they be treated as equal citizens to any other Frenchmen, even though they could have been living there, for a very long time. We did mention the Jews had been officially expelled from France in 1394. But obviously, at some point along the way, they trickled back and nobody said anything, so they were able to settle there. So if you look where France is on the map, there were, yeah, no, because it will come to life. Yeah, it will come to life better if you see it on that. So you see where France is on the left part of the map. I know it does. It just mentions the neighborhoods, that the different areas. So the three main areas where Jews lived were Alsace-Lorraine, which had a considerable, that was Ashkenazi community. The part you see there to the southwest, that's Bordeaux, and those were Sephardic Jews who had crossed the border from. There were most of them might have been original Portuguese Jews. They crossed the border from Spain, or they took the boat around, and they got to that part of France. It's not on the map, but like sort of in the north central part of the map is Paris, and there were Jews in Paris, not as many, and that could have been a mixture of some of the Portuguese Jews and also some of the Ashkenazi Jews. So in 1789, it's the French Revolution, and that's when they, National Assembly is called. And I mean, ultimately, they do decide, to give citizenship to the Jews in France. But a big, big dispute, and I told you, they were more willing to accept the Sephardic Jews because they felt that they spoke French. They seemed just more part of French society, whereas those Ashkenazi Jews were speaking Yiddish. They're very closely aligned with the German border, and the dispute was more whether to accept those Jews, right? But and in the end, they did. You see where Germany is there. So a lot of the emancipation, right, this granting of civil equal rights to Jews starts with the French Revolution, right, in Europe, and we in America were way in advance because already rights had been granted to the Jews starting, the 1600s. What we're going to do next, we're going to talk about that. But into the 1700s, and during the time of the American Revolution, some Jews were very prominent, and aided, the colonial, the American side. So hold on. Most of the emancipation in Europe, though, was going to occur in the 19th century, right? The only one is France, and that's at the very end of that, 18th century. All right, so we don't need this map. Hold on to it because obviously we're going to be dealing with this as we move into the 19th century. Now, I'm going to talk now about the Jews in the New World. And so you could just keep handy. First of all, things to just see. This one's called The Jewish Traders of Amsterdam. It just shows you how they spread. Because again, it will be the Portuguese Jews from Holland who will be the first to settle in the new land, in the Americas in general. Okay, so just follow along with me here, and I'll add more, as we go. The Jews in the New World. In the year, now this is going back before the Jews are really settled. So just like a background, in the year 1667, the Jews already had a history in America of 175 years. We're not talking about a huge number of Jews, but Jews were involved with the trade. Some of them were involved with furs. They would come to the Americas and trade with the Indians and get the furs. Because they make the hats, the beaver hats. And they would, but they weren't really like settling per se in America. They're just coming there for commercial reasons. I mean, some of them might have stayed on, but they probably intermarried. You know, so we don't really know much about what happened to them ultimately. But then we come to, starts with Columbus. That's 1402, right? He came to America. And, well, the Americas. He came to the Caribbean. He didn't go a step foot in North America. All he didn't realize there were these huge continents, because he lands on this island. Person thinks it's India. It's called the West Indies because he thought he was an Indian. That was his goal, to make a shorter trade route to go to India and China, and bring back riches from Asia. But in the middle, he didn't realize that there was these huge continents, and then there was another big ocean like Pacific on the other side. I don't think he even realized it was not it was a later explorer. Yes, it was to cross. No, what you see here is the Atlantic Ocean. This is the Atlantic Ocean. All right. The Pacific would be on the other side of South America. Right. All right, so he laid his plans, discovered the New World, and then this big period of colonization. So I like to accuse Israel of now. But so, and again, if you remember, those of you who went to school here in America, and it would talk about originally the Spanish and Portuguese. So just so looking at South America. So South America, most of it was settled by Spanish explorers, and that's why they speak Spanish there, as does Central America and Mexico. But Brazil was settled by the Portuguese, and that's why they speak Portuguese. Yeah, right. Eventually, because they had a big dispute, right? So I've had different cleaning ladies over the years, but some of them have come from Brazil. They're speaking Portuguese, right? But if I get somebody from America, I'm speaking Spanish. So I just wanted to show you. And then later we'll have the explorers from England, like Henry, and then the Dutch. Remember Henry Hudson, right? He discovered, and that's why the Hudson River is named after him. Can you imagine what it's like to take this journey that took weeks, I don't know, over a month to get to America, and then seeing this lush land, this really beautiful land. Yeah, it was, and with plenty of fowl and animals, fish, and it was verdant, and they initially come because they're looking for gold, but they really found something much better, right, than the gold. Although it's the Spanish who are most, you look what they did to the Aztecs, the Incas, and Peru. I mean, they destroyed these very rich culture civilizations. So now you can go visit the ruins, but those original, people are not here. There's, some of those Native Americans, right? So all right, so let's just go. So on board Christopher Columbus, but first of all, there's a whole dispute. Perhaps you've read article. Was Christopher Columbus himself possibly Jewish? Because he really came from Italy. And Jews had been migrating and leaving Spain for a while before the actual edict of expulsion. So that possibly his from a Converso family. Some of the things he wrote in his diary seem to allude to Jewish things. So here, let me just read what it says. Yeah, so Jewish history, right? So we talk about all these countries and France, also explored here. Um, some of the he never really talked much about his origins. And this I didn't even know till I was doing this research, that he used strange symbols in his letters to his son. I once actually wrote, you can borrow it from the public library, his diary of what he wrote when he came and discovered, the New World. And he talks even about the first chapter, part of his diary talks about what it was like leaving the fort in 1492 and had to be delayed by a day because all these Jews were being forced to leave Spain. Yes. No, there wasn't voting. Where they said who voted then? They weren't democracies.
Trade rights, land rights.
Yeah, just to be considered, not to have extra taxes put upon them because they were Jews. It would be more like that. The idea of voting would come at a later date. And right, and they had freedom of movement. Before that, they were restricted. They didn't have to live in a ghetto. So that's what they meant by being treated equally with the other citizens of the country. Okay. But, a lot of the people who were involved with his journey, the people who helped to pay for the journey, it wasn't just Ferdinand and Isabella, some Jewish financiers who helped to pay for this journey to discover this new route to the Indies. And for sure, some of the people on board the boat under the act had to openly profess to be Catholics, but we know, in fact, they were definitely, for sure, of Jewish origin, and they were converted. By the way, they don't like to be called Marranos, it's pigs, so right, so you should refer to them more as heathens, more respectful way to describe them. All right, so somebody else, just have the names here. I have to tell you, I'm going to look at more information, but my time is not my own race now, but I have the names here. So one of the main people who helped finance this trip was Louis de Santagnel. Santagnel, I don't know. So, that's how you would translate. Interesting. And actually, again, he was this wealthy man, and he's one of the people who would have convinced. It's interesting. It's more Isabella. I think she was the stronger of the two, but she put him in and Isabella. She called the shots. Yeah, right. Right, but they relied on Jewish, converso money also to help finance these various trips. Okay. Oh, it's interesting. And here again, I hadn't known this, so I was doing this research that when Columbus would send back reports, he would send them initially to this Louis de Santagnel, and then he in turn would have shared it obviously with Isabella, what he had discovered. Again, he really thinks he's in India, obviously the Native Americans, I mean, they're swarthier, but they don't look like Indians. I mean, Indians, India, but whatever, that's where he thought he was. And some of the people on board the boat, we know for sure they were conversants. Again, they wouldn't have been able to go unless they claimed that they were Catholics. All right. So there's nobody on board who said that they were Jew. There was this, and then he used a lot of his navigational tools were actually invented by Jews. They have like Pluto. He had charts. There's astrolabe. I don't know. There's some sort of an instrument that mentions, with something with the stars, so you know how to get your course properly. And that was invented by a Jew. And so it's interesting. They comment here that some of the Jews obviously were on board in 1492. They're being expelled. Well, although it's interesting, the people who were being expelled were those who wanted to retain their Judaism. Anybody who was willing to convert to the Catholic faith could remain in Spain. All right, they were really delineated. They were new Christians. Everybody really were Jew. I mean, over the centuries. Um, okay, and there was this other man who went around, Louis de Torres, and he said he was the interpreter because he knew Morse languages. Needless to say, he could not converse with those native Indians. He arrived, but he tried with whatever languages he did know. And which is why one was a doctor. Remember, I'm so sorry, I just did not. But I know that there was a doctor, but he was Jewish. Okay, but as soon as I'm sure you've seen like pictures and something, as soon as Columbus landed up, like a huge cross and claimed it for Catholic Spain. Okay, so now there's this new land and it's wide open. So a lot of conversos now decide, well, they want to try their they still feel so constricted, right? They don't want to live as Catholic anymore. They want to live openly as Jews. Well, let's go to the new land, and we'll be totally free here. Thought, but the Inquisition follows them. Whether you were a Spanish extraction or even Portuguese extraction, that Inquisition came. So we're going to learn some interesting things here. That's the last paragraph on this page. So when I talk about the Portuguese Jews there, but they were really the Dutch. They had left Portugal. They found a haven in Holland. And from Holland, they moved to South America. All right. So if you look at the map, and they initially settled in a place called Pernambuco, which is Recife, Brazil. Yeah, look how far it juts out into the Atlantic. And that's where the first Jews in the New World, that we know of, or that lived a while openly as Jews, were those Jews. They were Dutch Jews who came, but of Portuguese origin, and they go to Brazil. Eventually that becomes a whole huge Portuguese colony. Of course, their time there is short-lived. That's that in a minute, and that will bring us to our story of America, of North America. Okay. Look at this, what it says here. So the Inquisition wasn't slow, right, in placing obstacles in the way. Prospective immigrants to the New World were investigated. Before you could, like now you need a visa to go to certain countries. Well, you couldn't, even travel unless you had permission, and to get that permission, you had to prove that you were Catholic. We're not talking about. Holland is already a Protestant country. The Calvinists come from there. But it's mostly the Catholic country. It's one thing. There were lots of Portuguese explorers, but a lot of them eventually go to Asia and they have settlements there. Yeah, right. But except for Brazil, it's mostly Spaniards who were involved, with exploring. And right, they can imagine who. So that's the first thing they initiate. The explorers come, and then people eventually are enticed to actually settle in this new world, and they bring their lovely Inquisition there, and they keep an eye on all the residents, make sure they're properly, following the tenets of the church. And they were always on the lookout because they knew that these were conversos who were also coming to settle. So if they were any way that they felt secretly practicing Judaism, they would be denounced, and they would be treated just like the way the Inquisition treated Jews or conversos in their native countries. Look at this. In as early as the year 1520, a Spanish soldier in Mexico was executed on suspicion of practicing Judaism in secret. So that same ugly stuff that, from the old world is being brought to the new world. As the 16th century progresses, more and more people were denounced as being what they call Judaizers, is the Jewish way of life. Some of them they would send back to Spain. For again, we're not talking so much about Portugal, it's more Spain, the Spanish. They would be sent back and put on trial there by the Inquisition, and then whatever punishment they decided to give them. But others were imprisoned in the New World, right? And they were executed here in the New World. Because they thought they would come to such total freedom, you know, an escape from the ugly, you know, constraints, you know, of the Inquisition and its courts, and they still, you know, suffered. It's going to be different in North America. We're talking about wherever the Spanish settled, right, in the New World. There was an auto de fe look in the year 1593, and this takes place in northern Mexico, pretty close to the U.S. border. And it said this family of this Louis Caravelle went to their death professing their Judaism. They thought that they could live there freely and openly as Jews. Nope, didn't work out. And there was another very famous one, auto de fe, which takes place in 1639 in Peru. And then that man, along with 10 others, his name was Francisco Bernardo de Silva, it's 10 others. They were burned at the stake for Judaism. You know, that's when the auto de fe, that you're burned alive at the stake. I know, horrible. They thought it was a mercy if they would first garrote you, you know, and then burn you, you know, but otherwise you would be burned alive. And I can imagine once, and probably once a year in the New World too, huge crowds would gather and watch this and listen to the screams of and yeah, wow, yeah. The one that's a very staunchly Catholic country, right? I mean, most of South America. But the first struggle, right, for religious freedom will take place in, well, we'll start in Brazil, in that town, but eventually then I'll tell you the story of how they come to settle in, you know, New Amsterdam, eventually, the first Jews to come. Let me just make sure there's, all right, so this next paragraph talks about, you know, those converts. Now, originally, Brazil is settled by the Portuguese. Naturally, the Inquisition is in place there. But then the Dutch come in for a short period of time. You know, they defeat the Portuguese, and now it's a Dutch colony. And the Dutch allow anybody to come. And so that's why you're going to find a lot of Dutch Jews are going to come originally of Portuguese descent, and they are going to come and settle in this town, which will eventually be called Recife. I once had a lady, she came from there. I was like so excited, you know. That I mean, I actually knew where her origin, you know, where her town was. Right. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, she certainly was. She was fair skinned. She wasn't a rat at all. So who knows? Maybe. I mean, I once had another time of being. Always I have discussions with it's interesting. I like to find out their origins, where they come from. And she said, yes, she did. She had a grandfather, you know, who called himself there. But it was the grandfather. Okay, so again, you know, this relatively new colony is now going to be populated, ruled over by the Dutch. So now the combatants living here are oh, freedom. Okay. I mean, now they're going to live openly as Jews there, and they even invited a rabbi from Amsterdam to come and help service with these. His name was Abu Fonseca, and he's the first rabbi to serve on American soil. So interesting. Yes, he was Dutch. He came from, because initially a lot of the aid, especially the Dutch Jews, was coming from that. I don't know if you ever were in Amsterdam. It's very, very beautiful Spanish Portuguese synagogue. You know, that's there, and they would they would take some of them Torah scrolls, whatever they needed, they would help them to establish themselves. But what happened in the year 1654, early in that year, January 1654, again, the battle took place and the Dutch lost it. And then there's really, that all of Brazil reverts now to control of the Portuguese. They in turn are going to bring back the Inquisition. I mean, they have more time to devote to, making themselves wealthy. And to spend the time rooting out the few people there who practice Judaism. Okay, so now I'll tell you the story. How did the Jews end up in North America? So again, they're Dutch Jews. So most of them they're actually returned to Holland, right? And they're going to settle there. Family members who live there. There's this one boat with 23 Jews on board, and it was picked up by a captain. Now, I personally feel they said they had a storm at sea. Of course, this is earlier in the year. I'm not sure it's sometime late summer, prime hurricane season. So you could visualize that there's one boat, most of them Jamaican, they make it back to Holland, but this one boat goes off course, ends up in the Caribbean in Martinique, which is a French colony. And there's a captain there who agrees that he will, they're looking for places to settle. And he says, well, I'll take you to New Amsterdam, right, in North America, because it is a Dutch colony. One of the other main Dutch colonies in South America is Suriname, which is part of Dutch Guyana. I mean, I think they have their freedom, their independence. But there's three Guyana there. Anyways, one of them is Dutch. So he agrees to take them on board and come to New Amsterdam. They get off the boat. So it's a combination of men, women, and children. 23, not a very large number of Jews. And it's getting close to Rosh Hashanah because they arrive in September. And but Peter Stuyvesant, Pegleg Stuyvesant, learning that, who's the governor of New Amsterdam. He doesn't want them to remain. I mean, he does initially let them talk about refuge, but you can't stay here. You can't live here. He was the big proponent of the Dutch Reformed Church. In fact, it's the only church he wanted in his colony, and he hated the Catholics. Right then, nobody living openly. It's just the Dutch Reformed Church. Jews too, who had decided to live openly as Jews. He doesn't want them either. So he writes a letter. The kids nowadays, they can't imagine writing a letter, everything's texting. So, and I lived a whole year in Israel. I was there during the State War. Just wrote letters to my parents. I mean, I never talked to them on the phone. Who just to pick a phone call? It's so expensive. So, and he wrote a letter back to Holland, to Amsterdam, because really he was really an employee of the Dutch West Indies Company. And, he wanted, I guess, their permission, that he could get rid of these Jews and deny them, the fact that they could actually settle there and have a congregation. But unbeknownst to him, some of the members of, the board were Jews themselves. And so the letter came back, obviously, a few months for correspondence back and forth. And yes, you will allow these Jews to remain there, and they can settle there, not just a very short temporary refuge, but they can actually settle there. Now, I asked Shalom about this because Shalom had, for 6 years, he was, he wasn't called the assistant rabbi. And Spanish Portuguese synagogue in New York City, which you have never been to. It's a very beautiful show. It's on Central Park West and 70th. the entrance, even though there's a very beautiful entrance on Central Park West, you really enter on 70th Street. You know, it's pretty nondescript entrance, but that's how you get into the show. And there's a guard there, obviously. You know, anybody can walk into the show. And so so that is the first synagogue in America, founded by these original 23 Jews. Now, once these 23 Jews settled there, other Jews from Holland also decided to go and seek their fortune, you know, and joined that community. So it's going to very slowly, you know, grow from the 17th century. But Shalom told me it was more the 18th century, more in the 1700s, that more and more the Jews are going to come and settle. And what happened is they landed in 1654. 10 years later, 1664, the English sent a huge fleet to the port of New Amsterdam, and they just, you know, all right, well, we're not going to fight with you, come in, and it became New York. So I don't know if you've ever been, I haven't loved visiting these museums when I am in New York. There's a museum of the city of New York. It's 103rd and I think 5th. So north of the metropolitan, you know, 103rd. And they always have very fascinating exhibits there. And then there's also on Central Park West, like in the low 80s, that exactly, you know, past that, the Museum of Natural History, you know, and there's a museum there from the Historical Society. It's called the Historical Society. And they also, every time I would go there, you know, they would have a different exhibit. They're amazing. And I think on the top floor, the early settlement in New York City. And if you go on their website, they you know, on occasion I've listened to lectures, you know, most of them the lectures have to be in person, but some they do virtually, and they're fascinating, you know, to learn about. Anyway, this is how the Jews end up in North America. They settle there. Oh, this is what I want to tell you though. Shalom told me that most of those 23 original Jews, they actually go back to Amsterdam. They really don't stay on. Other Jews will definitely come. He said more and more into the 17th. Now I remember discovering I and see different things. So even though I lived in the city here for many years, I knew that up and down the Hudson River, both sides of the Hudson River, are a lot of fascinating places that you could tour and visit, including Roosevelt, Hyde Park. You know, but well, Newport comes to the drop later, Rhode Island. So I'm just about the Hudson River. So I remember close to where the Chatham Wine Company has, you know, like across the road and maybe a mile or two from it, there's a mill that you can tour. And but who founded this mill in this area? It was a member of Shevet Israel from New York City who decided to set up a trading post there with the Indians. But you know, the people who it's a museum now, but the last owners of this mill were non-Jews, but they were fascinated with the origins of this. They did a lot of research. So if you ever have a chance, it's wonderful to go tour this place. So I told Shalom about it, because he was then still at Shevet. And so he came to visit it. They wouldn't charge him, you know, because he had this link. But he was something fascinating. I mean, he recognized the name of the man who had set up this trading post because he was a member. So he didn't live there like year round. He would go back and forth from New York City, you know, across the Hudson River, right, and go to his trading post. So I thought that was very illuminating. And I found that out because I had a book, like a book touring of the New York City area or New York State. And that's how I discovered there was this place to visit. Most people probably just come upon it by accident, but I thought it was fascinating. By the way, during this same time period, so obviously those Jews living in Portugal have to leave or go underground again. And that's when Jews started settling in the Caribbean. And so if you have ever had a chance, to, I mean, the only place I was ever in was Virgin Islands, and there is an old, it's a very small Spanish Portuguese still there, still exists, but I don't know how bona fide, there. I mean, yeah, I mean, most of the people go down to the Caribbean Jewish, whatever. But it's interesting to tour and to see. Basically, it's like one big room, and that's where the same. But there are again other Dutch colonies. So Aruba, has a Spanish Portuguese. So it still exists to this very day. Jamaica, Barbados. Right, that's where in Aruba. Where is that? Oh, Curacao. Curacao, right. That was another colony. Curacao is where they're all the different colored buildings. Right. Yeah, I mean, I've seen photos. I've never. Shalom's taken a journey to all these places. I told her he was on this quest to visit every Spanish, Portuguese, Jewish community in the world. So he went to France also. He was in Bordeaux. He saw these other two. He was there for 6 years, little over 6 years, and I couldn't believe it. He's already 8 years in Bevis Marks in London. Yeah. So he's like really international. Spanish, Portuguese. He was once visiting my son in Detroit, and my son asked him if he'd like to daven, read the daven. He said he couldn't anymore. His nusach is Spanish, and it's very, very different sounding from the Ashkenazi way of davening. Okay, by the way, the richest Dutch colony where Jews settled was Suriname. Can you believe that? New Amsterdam, I don't know, it was contributing something to the economy, but it was Suriname that was the wealthiest of the colonies. That's why they were willing to have a fight to give up New Amsterdam. Because they were making so much from that colony, but they were making a lot from Suriname, and they could not give up Suriname to the English. What's that? A lot was from the fur trade. And as obviously as demand would dwindle, whatever they used to say, New York became a huge port, as we know, and did a lot of business with the Caribbean, import of rum and sugar, was grown down there, and the drink. I mean, that's where the most of the money was coming from that they were making it. And I did mention last week that the discovery of the cacao beans and chocolate is from the New World. It was then brought to the Old World. I told you in France was a major producer of chocolate, and then there were coffee houses all over the place. I do, I love to read novels, historical novels, and read. There's an author who I really like a lot. His name is David Liss, Liss, and I can't remember the first book he came out, but he writes about Spanish Portuguese Jews. So the first book that he wrote takes place actually in England, and was talking about how the stock exchange grew. So I have followed it up to a certain point, and lost me. When he started talking about the finances. But he also wrote a book called The Coffee Trader, which takes place in Amsterdam. And it's also, again, it's made for Candace is always the Spanish Portuguese Jew. He talks about businesses, stages, love life, whatever. He's written a lot. He's written some that take place in America too, but he's written a lot about that European part of the world. Okay, let me just see what else I wanted to tell you here. Okay. And obviously, I presume Peter Stuyvesant, right, obviously, he's a British master in charge, in Amsterdam. Um, okay, and you could, see that middle paragraph on that page 3. So it talks about the fact that there had been already a Jew who was living in New Amsterdam. And he said he had arrived just about a half a year, but again, he was busy with the fur trade. He never requested to settle. That was the problem with Stuyvesant, that these 23 Jews wanted to stay there. They didn't want to go back to Holland anymore. And he didn't want them, right, to settle there. Okay, I think I covered that they do stay and they have equal rights there. Okay, was that it? I just 3 pages for this? I thought I had a little bit more. Let me just look. Yes, I'll just look on here. Oh, right. So when they come, they don't found the shul immediately. They're davening privately. Eventually, Shevet Israel is founded, and their first shul is on a little street. Some of the initial settlement was very small. Wall Street, there was literally a wall there. That was the northernmost thing, because on the other side lived the Native Americans, the Indians. So this was the keep them out of the little colony. So the first shul was actually found on a street called Mill Street. Should you ever visit Shevet Israel, they have, I think it's like their initial lobby area. They have drawings, from like it went through 5 different shuls until it came to its current location, which was like in the probably 1890s. So that shul that you visit today is from the 1890s. But there were other, like inside this main shul, they have their there's a little tiny shul which was taken apart from the previous shul. It's very, very beautiful, and they do daven there during the week. It's not large space, but you can see all the original woodwork. And if you daven in, there's a very typical way of building a Spanish Portuguese shul. There's a big wide open part in the center, and then a little bit more towards the back is Dobbins, Torah. The men sit on either side, facing in, right, and the women's gallery and where, they daven. And then in front, is an orange footage, but I told you, very formal sort of davening. You must wear it. If you get, the rabbi has to robe. I mean, Shalom is much nicer than the one because his is black and stuff like velvet, going down. But he has to wear a special shirt, like it goes with it. And okay. So at some point I can show you pictures of my little grandson wearing, he bought him a magician's hat, it looks like a top hat. And he comes to show it. He wears his top hat. Yeah. And he loves to watch the flying. I remember davening there. They are Jewish members of what's the Metropolitan Opera House, and they were recruited. They obviously, the choir master is a member of their school, so he taught them all, but you go there, it's like very story and a big high ceiling, dangling windows. It's a very beautiful place, davening. So in Shalom Shul, they all look the same. You can go to other towns and cities. It could be that might have been. Yeah, Shalom has to be with the rabbi. But no, I understand. Yeah, so right, I went to Bar Mitzvah there, but but they wear smaller televisions, at least Spanish Portuguese. They're not the big ones, you know, that we would see in the Ashkenazi shows. Because even he has the rub, he doesn't wear the typical towels that we think of. It's a much shorter, just how it goes to your waist, you know, and comes around. Yeah, and it doesn't have those black stripes. You know, it's very, very different. I say, sorry, Sean did not come here in person today, but he's very busy taking care of his little guy. Who is a real challenge. I mean, this guy's got a strong personality. So, whatever. Let me just make sure I cover it. Oh, so, and one of the key people settling is Oscar Levy, and he has become a prominent member there. And again, it's the fur trade. This is how they're making most of their money. Actually, I have a book at home. It's like a young adult book. Its name is Avner Gold, published by Berkshire, called The Fur Trader. So it talks about the time period. Okay, so they're accepted. All right, and then they go as far north as Albany, you know, up the Hudson River, you know, to Albany, and then even into New Jersey, you know, which is the southern part of the New World. Let me just make sure. All right, and then I told you it's all taken over by the British. In any case, in 1664. So hopefully through this map, you can see how they went from the old world, right? They left, these were Jews who left Portugal. They went to live in Holland. They eventually then, they go, because it's, at that point it's not a colony, they go to Recife in Brazil. Then they go, reverts back to being a Portuguese. They left, I told you they ended up, this one boatload, 22 Jews, ended up in Saint Martinique, here, and eventually they come to Amsterdam, and that's how the Jews come to settle. So I always find it fascinating because 1620 is when the Pilgrims came, and in 1654 are these first Jews, which is like amazing, just 34 years after. So we're part and parcel of the growth of the New World, especially of New York City. There's no question about that one. And I hope you enjoyed. I told you this, but I know from Shalom, he said that most of those initial Jews leave, and it's other Dutch Jews who will come and settle, put down more permanent, you know, roots, and they stay there even when the British, you know, take over. Okay. One interesting thing, I can't recall now, but I read another interesting book, Pizarro, who was the founder of Impressionism, but he came from, I don't know if it's St. Thomas, he came from one of those islands there. So it's a book about his, you know, his mother, who was of Spanish, you know, Portuguese descent. That's why he has the name Pizarro, you know, yeah. Even though he eventually goes and settles in Paris, and that's very famous painter. But apparently, who ended up settling in, you know, colonies spread out throughout the Caribbean? Let's say a Jewish family living in Amsterdam had several sons. The problem son would be sent to the Caribbean. You're on your own now. You figure out. Some of them did it extremely well. And you know, that Hamilton, you know, his mother, you know, was. He said, I never saw the play, but apparently it talks about, you know, in the play. But to me, I find it bizarre though. These black actors. I mean, these were white people, you know. But you know, something different. What? Right, exactly. Whatever, they wanted to accommodate themselves. So I hope I gave you a nice picture of what it was like in early America, how those Jews came to settle there, and how, even though, I mean, my descent's from Eastern Europe, you know, not way back. Shalom told me again, this Spanish in Israel, New York City, that he said there were maybe 5 people there who could trace their descent back to those early Portuguese Dutch Jews. Who said, but that's the only sign. Now in Bevis Marks, though, yeah, I think he has more. And they're very, very proud of their heritage. Oh yeah. And if you go, by the way, you travel in, and you should go to visit. One thing to do, when you go to any of their cemeteries, everything's written in Portuguese. Because that was their native language. And also, I guess that helps keep their identity. Oh, that could be, but a lot of the others, they are written in Portuguese. And Solomon said he could even find in Bevis Marks, a very, very old Siddurim, and they will have like Spanish prayers, you know, mixed in. I mean, they are in Hebrew, but they do have some. And just I want to always clarify this when people get very confused about this. Ladino is a language of the Ottoman Empire. And then, so these other Jews, they show them this called Western Sfardim, they do not speak Ladino. Oh, no, they're very. Yeah, as I said, it was the Ottoman. Well, part of that, and then anybody itself, they would speak. Yeah. Yes, right. It's like old Spanish. But I don't think you could go to Spain today and try talking, you know, regular Spaniard. But it, right, it has, it's a mixture of Hebrew and Spanish. It's like it was an Yiddish and German Hebrew. No, plus mixed with numerous bits and pieces. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off. Everybody be well. No, I mean, he's still going to be here next week, but Andrea's parents are coming